We're learning Tractate Eruvin, the holding in chapter 3. The name of the chapter is Rabbi Menashe, and we'll start with page 32. Amar Rav Sheshis Mena Minala. About 3 lines on the top. Rav Sheshis said, "From where do I know to say that we rely on this presumption even in matters of biblical law?" What is the presumption that we learned yesterday? Chazak or shliach oiseh shlichusa. There is a presumption that a shliach, an agent, you sent him to do something, he would actually do it. This is the presumption. So comes the Gemara and says, how do we know that we should rely on this? Where do you take it? So he answers, Mishakor va'im utar chodesh miyat. It says after the omer was offered, the new grain was permitted immediately. If you look at number 3, we actually learned it in the Gemara in Menachos. It says the Omer was a mincha offering consisting of barley. That's in number 4, right? Mincha consisting of barley. It was brought on the 2nd day of Pesach, which is the Zayin Pesach. Svav is the 15th, on the 16th of Pesach, at any time of the day, after which the new crop, chodosh, of which of the 5 grains could be eaten. Today, when there is no omer, there's no omer offering, the new crop of grain may not be eaten until the night of the 17th of Nisan in Eretz Yisrael, and the night of the 18th of Nisan outside Eretz Yisrael. So, what does it have to do with us? We're trying to prove that there is a legal presumption that an agent performs his mission. The Gemara says, "V'o chodesh d'oraiso." Now, eating from the new crop before the omer has been offered is a biblical transgression. Meaning, Torah said you're not supposed to eat from the new grain before the omer is given. Once a year. So, this is a biblical violation if you were to eat. Chodesh d'oraiso, v'ketani arechoikim, mutar mechatzis ve'elach. We just learned that those who were distant, those who were far from Yerushalayim, and they could not know exactly, because we said the omer could be given the entire day. If I live outside of Yerushalayim, live far away, I don't know when they gave the omer. What does it say? What does it say? Mechatzos ve'elach. From midday and on, you can eat if you live outside Yerushalayim. How do I know that the omer was bought? Maybe it wasn't. You should maybe say you should wait for the next day to make sure, because it says the whole day I'm allowed to give the mincha of the omer. So it says you're allowed to eat it from midday because chazaka shliach oiseh shlichusa, because the legal presumption that since there's got to be that the Beis Din, the Kohanim, they all prepared it and they sent somebody to give the omer. For sure, they gave the mincha. Isn't this because the Mishnah relied on the legal presumption that an agent, in this case the Kohen in the temple, performs the mission? So we are relying on the Kohen. He for sure did it. You don't really, if you want to be if you want, you say, how do I really know that he did it? Today, everything has to be proven. If it's not verified, it's not true, right? That's how the society is. And even when it's verified, people will still question.
Everybody goes crazy. It's sick.
Yes, there's no end. They say, okay, but I don't believe this one. Oh, okay, believe this one. I believe this one. So there's no end to this. But so, Torah tells Chazaka Shaliach Oiseh Shlichusa. You appointed somebody to do something, he probably did it. So here's a proof to Rav Sheshis. Rav Sheshis said the Chazaka Shaliach would do it. What was the case that we said? If I hired you to put the Eruv, so not only that you like me, but I have presumption that you're going to do it, that you did it. So therefore, I can comfortably walk on Shabbat, the 2,000 amot, the extra 2,000 amot, knowing that you did it.
So here we assume that but we usually bring the Omer the night of the second night, tomorrow. So wouldn't we assume that the Kohen would be doing it the same time we do it? Like we're doing it every year?
No, it says the Kohen is allowed to do it all day.
Okay, but he can do it from Marov.
No, it's he does it on the 16th day. On the 16th day of Nisan.
Right.
From the morning till the evening. That's the time.
How come? No. Okay, so then I have a question. So why are we doing this?
Certain things are bought at night. Certain things need to. So I guess you can ask the same question about Korban Tamid. Korban Tamid is bought in the morning. You say, well, let's start from the night. Why? Because Korbanos were offered in the morning. Korbanos were not offered at night. The only thing that was offered at night was the leftovers. If they had some shiraim leftovers that were burnt at night. So they weren't like for sale. There was no offerings at night.
Okay, fine, good. So why are we saying Sfiras Omer at night?
Sfiras Omer is not a korban.
Okay.
It's not a korban.
All right.
And beside, you should also say Sfiras Omer during the day,
right,
without a bracha, but you can say it during the day also.
But if we said it then at night,
but that's not a korban. It's not a korban.
All right. Just no problem.
They close the Beit HaMikdash, or they close?
Yeah, nighttime. Nighttime it was closed. Yeah. Obviously, there was maybe Kohanim there that ate, but in general, there was Kohanim. There was a lot of guards in the Beit HaMikdash, not so much for security, for honor, and also to make sure that people don't go into areas where they're not supposed to. Because if they go there, they can be in violation of Torah law. And sometimes there could be ramifications.
And there were plagues then. I wonder what they did with the plagues. Like then pandemics then.
Rav Nachman, who rules that we do not rely on this presumption in matters of biblical law, how does he refute this proof? Says, what are you going to say against it? Here you go, is a proof from the laws of Omer that we do believe that Chazakah, that the Shliach is going to do, agent is going to do what he was told to do. So he says, awesome kedekesoni taima. There states the reason why those distant from Yerushalayim may assume that the new grain has become permitted by midday, because they know that the court does not procrastinate with it. They're not waiting. They're just doing it right away. Right? The Kohanim zrizim, Kohanim are acting quickly, and they would not wait. The people can justifiably rely on the diligence of the court to ensure that their agents, the Kohanim, will offer the Omer as quickly as possible. However, in the case of ordinary agents whom no one oversees, there is such assurance that they will fulfill their assignments there's no such assurance that they will fulfill their assignments with such alacrity, with such speed and quickness.
Like
Like the Kohanim. Kohanim, it's the public rely on them, so for sure they'll do it right away. When it's one person, there's a good chance. That's what Rav Nachman says. And others say that Rav Nachman cited the Mishnah as his own source. A different answer. Rav Nachman said, from where do I know to say this? Because the Mishnah teaches the reason why those distant from Yerushalayim may eat the new crop after midday, because they know that the court which oversees the Omer, the court that watches the Omer offerings, does not procrastinate with it. They don't wait. Based in from this we can learn that only a court does not procrastinate. A shaliach, but a private agent, may indeed procrastinate in performing his charge. Rav Sheshes Omar Lo, Rav Sheshes would tell you to refute this proof. Beis din ad palgiyim, shaliach kulayimo. The Mishnah attributes to the court a higher degree of alacrity, and so we may presume it, and so we may presume it will ensure that the omer is brought by midday. There's a higher degree, a higher level of, that they will do it quickly. Shaliach kulayim, in the case of agent who has the entire day to fulfill his responsibilities, while we cannot assume that he completed his task ahead of schedule, we can rely on him to complete it on time. That's what Rav Sheshes says. You're right. He says to Rav Nachman, your argument is right. When the Beis Din is involved, for sure it will be faster. But Shaliach has the whole day, so you can say, okay, he didn't do it early on Friday, but eventually he will do it. Okay, he's not going to do it as fast, but he'll still do it. This whole concept of procrastination is very fascinating. It's like why people push things if they have to do them. If you have to do something anyway, why do you push it off?
Laziness?
Not necessarily. You're busy doing other things.
The stuff that's the most unpleasant, you push off as far as you can.
Okay, that's something. Yeah, so if you have 10 things to do today, psychologically, you'll do the things that you enjoy first.
Yeah, that's the opposite way of looking at what I just said.
Yeah. So this is like going a little bit deeper inside of our makeup, our psyche, and try to figure out why we do things in that way. And the chokhmah is, I guess, the trick is to figure out how to do the things that we don't like with joy also. If we can bring pleasure to them, we'll be able to do them right away.
When I was working, they said you need to work at organizing your day to do the most important thing first. They said that we spend most time doing the acharayim, the
things that are not important.
Right,
Yeah.
and then we go, okay, I'll tell you the hardest part, real estate, right? How to do cold calls and try to generate more. I hated it. I hate almost as bad as the mask. Okay, so therefore, no business, out.
Right. Yeah, I'm Rav Sheshes Menam Min Lo. The Tanya of Sheshes said, from where do I know to say it? By the way, it reminded me, I remember when I took the real estate course, the guy said that to make the cold calls was the hardest, and therefore he would find a way to do it in a fun way. So he would take his phone, he would go into the bathtub, make a bubble bath. He'd sit in the tub. He had a good shot of whiskey, and then he would make the calls. And he said he was like the jolliest guy on the phone, and he would make jokes with people, and he would get the listing after listing. So, but you get the idea. Like he found a way to make it fun.
Right.
So he knew that gives him.
Put pleasure in something that's not so good.
Yeah.
We used to have the office.
Now we take it to the Torah. I said, how can you do something that is it's monotonous. It's monotonous. You do it every day. So how do you bring joy into it? So you find different ways to
With chocolate cake.
inject joys into the mitzvah. Yeah.
Put a joke is something that
Yeah.
you always do.
The simcha.
You put a
Happy.
Yeah.
You bring
Well,
the-
they wanted the mind to open up a little bit, to loosen up. So when the mind loosen up, he's more perceptive. You can receive more. And the mind is tight and it's like, so you can't really understand. So Rav Sheshes says the Tanya Isha She'esha Leida Ziva. a woman who has upon her the obligation of one who has given birth or has experienced a ziva. What is the obligation? Is to bring a korban. Right? Look at number 10. She must bring a sheep, or for an ola offering, and a dove for a chatas offering. So she has this obligation on her head. Now, do you think she will procrastinate or she'll give it right away?
Procrastinate.
Sometimes the obligations people have, they push it off. Mevia Moris may bring money and place it into a specially designated shofar-like box located in the temple. So they had a pushka, like a charity box that looked like a shofar. Maybe it's an idea. People should make a pushka like this.
It was in the Sech the
That looked like a shofar. Yeah.
And this, right?
Right.
You just read it.
You're right. And it says that she brings the money, places it into this specially designated shofar-like box located in the temple.
Oh, here it says it.
Each woman, it says in number 12, the boxes were narrow at the top and wide at the bottom and bent in the shape of a shofar so that it would be difficult for thieves to remove the money. Rav Tushkolim, 6:1. Each woman tied her money in a bundle to indicate her identity.
Ah, fancy.
Wow. So then they don't have to bring the korban?
Let's see. It says, now it answers your question. And then she immerses herself in the mikvah and is permitted to eat truma, sacred food, that evening. If she's married to a Kohen or she's a daughter of a Kohen. Because she can assume that the Kohanim had purchased doves with her money and sacrificed them before evening. Lest she eat sacred food while still tamei and thereby incur the Kohen's penalty. Imagine, that's a big liability. She just gave you the money. How does she know that the Kohanim actually bought the korban, the dove, and the sheep for olah? Olah for sheep for olah and dove for chatat. How do we know that they actually did it? She left the money.
They are trustable.
But if she eats in a state of tumah, kodashim, she's liable to karet.
Wow.
But still, why are we relying on it? Why shouldn't we verify or wait for the next day to make sure that for sure it was given? Again, we're going back to this chazakah. Presumption that an agent, in this case the Kohen in the temple, performs his mission. So, hence the presumption operates even when a biblical law is involved. This is a biblical law, very serious situation. Rav Nachman rules that we do not rely on the presumption in matters of biblical law. So I guess that's really what the machloket is boiled down to. Rav Shesha says, Chazaka shliach oisa shlichusa even in biblical law. And Rav Nachman says no, only in rabbinical law, but not in biblical law. I'm trusting the shaliach to a certain level, but not when it comes to Torah matters.
So then that's no good for the woman to go to mikveh.
It's like, you imagine you have, you need to make lunch in your office. Your office is not kosher. And so you pay your secretary, you say, okay, here's the money, go to a kosher store and buy the food. And she buys the food, puts it in the office. Now can you eat or not?
No.
Do you say chazaka shaliach or say shlichuta?
I think it depends if she's the shikster or not.
No, it depends on the seal. If the food is...
Yeah, but why don't we?
Listen.
Why don't we trust her? Why don't we trust that chazaka shliach or shlichusa?
So
she's a Kohen. He was a Kohen.
If she's a Jew.
No, but you know what? If the office was kosher, she would know to go to a Roma or whatever. If the office isn't kosher, she wouldn't know what to do, or she would think, what the heck? So it wouldn't matter if she's Jewish.
All I'm saying that it's not necessarily being followed today. I mean, that the presumption is shaliach oisa shlichus.
Right, because I'll tell you what happened. So we work in the list Laura Loomer, and they had they had a party. So her campaign person comes to me and said, I should be in charge of the food. The food's right there. And so this other guy comes over from New York, from Yid. He says, let's look at it. He says, no, it's from Ben's. I said, oh, no, not Ben's.
Right.
So except for the veggies, you could forget about it.
So Rav Nachman, who rules that we do not rely on the presumption in matters of biblical law, how could he refute this proof? Here's a proof about the biblical law that the woman is now allowed to eat. And it's a chorus penalty. Hasam kederav sham'ei, or shmayo. There she is allowed to rely on the Kohanim for the reason stated by Rav Shmaya. The Amar Rav Shmaya said, Chazak Kohen Beis Din Shel Kohanim, there is a presumption that the court composed of Kohanim, who supervised the activities of the temple, did not rise from there to depart in the evening, until they saw to it that all the money in the shofar, like collection box, was spent. Here we rely on the diligence of the court. Still, there is no proof that we may similarly rely on individual agent. So over there, the Beis Din would make sure that the money is used. So it's in that case, Amar Rav Sheshes Menamin. So Rav Sheshes said, from where do I know to say it, that we may rely on the presumption, even in matters of biblical law? The Tanya, another proof. One who says to his friend, go and gather for yourself some figs from my fig tree. Okay, so I tell you, go and take some figs from my fig tree. The friend may eat from them in a casual manner, not as a part of a meal, without having to tithe them. Yeah, he's allowed to eat without tithing. And if he eats them as a meal, if he's not just snacking on them, he must tithe them with certainty. For without doubt, the donor did not tithe the gift because you picked them from the trees. For without doubt, the donor did not tithe the gift of figs from other produce. However, if the owner of the figs told his friend, fill for yourself this basket with figs from my fig tree. Fill up a basket. In this case, he knows exactly how many figs he is giving away. The friend may eat from them in a casual manner, not as a part of a meal, without having to tithe the figs. And if he eats them as a meal, if it's a full meal for him, he must tithe them as if he were tithing the mai, because the owner of the fig tree may have already removed the teruma and maisa from him. In what case were these words said? When the donor of the figs is a common person. But when he is a chaver, is a part of a group that took upon themselves to be very strict and stringent, he can eat without giving maisa. He doesn't need to, because it's...
The mai is the doubt. You don't know if it's tied or not. If they give maisa.
We said da mai. What is it? The mai. Da, it's two words. It's really What is it? If it's maaser or not? Tevel is for sure, right? Tevel we know is for sure, and the mai is a doubt. But he said if it's a chover, you don't have to. There's no doubt. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says, in what case were these words said, Ba'am ha'oretz? When the donor of the figs is a common person. Aval b'chover eno yochel ad shias. It says the opposite. If it's am ha'oretz, he doesn't need to. Eino tzorich la'asa. But if it's chover, he has to give maisa. When he is chover, the recipient may not eat the figs as a meal until he has tied them with certainty. Why? Because chaverim are not suspected of separating teruma or maisa from produce not in close proximity to this tevel. Since the picked figs were never in a possession of the chaver, they were on a tree. He would not tie them. A common person, however, may have tied the figs from produce located elsewhere.
Because he didn't know the halacha. That's the reason?
No, I mean, usually you don't tie when it's on the tree.
You only give when it's in your home, when you bring home.
Then you are obligated, yes. Then you become obligated. So Amar Rabbi nirin devorai midivrei abo. My words are more acceptable than the words of father, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel. Mutav shechoshdu chaverim liYisraelim sheloi min hamukaf v'lo yachilu la'am ha'aretz tvolim. Said it is preferable, better, that chaverim should be suspected of separating teuma and ma'aser from produce not in close proximity to the tevel, and not feed unsuspecting common people food which is tevel. It says in 28, the chaver would therefore choose the lesser evil of separating teruma in an undesirable manner, rather than risk the real possibility that his friend will not himself tithe the produce and therefore commit a serious violation of eating tevel. So the Rav Sheshes analyzes the bais. Ad kan li pligia the marsover nechshedu, marsover loy nechshedu. What is the machlekes? Rabbi is of the opinion that nechshedu, that chaverim would be suspected of tithing from produce located elsewhere in this situation, right? Because you can say, you can have fruits on the tree and you can have fruit in your house, and you can say the fruits are in my house are myself for the fruit that I'm going to pick from the tree. It doesn't have to be. If you have barrels of wine, you can say the barrel of wine over here will become now teruma myself for the barrels of wine that I have there.
But could you say that the barrel of wine is nicer for the wine that I'm going to make from these grapes on the tree?
Yeah?
Yeah.
Even before it comes to wine?
Why not? You designate it.
Okay.
So it says, Umar Savar Loi Nechshedu. And this master, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, said that they are not suspected because it is improper to tithe in this manner. So it's not proper. It's possible. But Kula, however, everyone except that under normal circumstances, we may rely on the presumption that an agent performs his mission. Hence, both Tanoim of the Baisa Rav support Rav Sheshes' contention that we rely on the presumption even in a case involving biblical law. The Rav Nachman also Rav Chayzo. Rav Nachman rules that we do not rely on the presumption in the case of biblical law. He says the reason we presume that the chaver tithed the figs accords with Rav Chanina Choyzo. There is a presumption concerning a chaver that he does not release anything unremedied from his possession, something that is not right, such as tevel, which cannot be eaten unless it is tithed. Amar ma b'med dvarim amurim. In what case were these words said? Be'am haaretz, when the owner of the figs is a common person. Aval b'chover oichel ben tzorich la'aser divrei Rabbi. But when he is a chover, the recipient may eat the figs and need not tie them at all, because it can be assumed with certainty that all the proper teruma and meiser portions were separated by the donor. These are the words of Rabbi. This common person, whom did he tell to take a basketful of figs? If he said, if we say that he told his friend, who is likewise a common person, so a common person is telling a common person, and according to Rabbi, the friend must treat the figs as the mai. That is not true. With a doubt, maison the mai mitzais. Would he listen to your instructions to tithe the mai? Of course not. He's a common person. The recipient will be more inclined to trust his friend tithe the produce than to listen to you. Obviously, then the Baisa is not referring to this case. Ella, what are we dealing with? Amor is the chover, with a common person telling a chover to take from his figs. Rather, the Baisa must be discussing a common person who tells the chover to take a basket full of figs, and the chover will certainly follow your instructions to tithe the figs himself. Ema Seifa. If so, explain the end of this Baisa, which said, Nirin dvoi medivra abo, my words are more acceptable than the words of father, Rabbi Gamliel. Mutav shechoshdu chaverim leisraim, for it is preferable that chaverim should be suspected of separating Truma and Meiser sheloi min hamukav from produce not in close proximity to the tevel. And not feed common people food which is tevel. What are common people doing there? In the latter part of this Braisa, we have just proven that the recipient of the gift of figs was a chaver. For a common person would not tithe the mai. Here's a doubt, big deal. He doesn't even have the doubts. He doesn't think too much about doubt. Chaver would have a doubt, he would give Maisa. Amar Ravina Reisha B'Amar Shomar LeChaver. The first case of the Braisa involves a common person who told the chaver to take a basket of figs. Seifa b'chover shomar l'amar. The last case of the Braisa involves a chaver who told the common person to take a basket of figs. A chaver acher shomer. Another chaver overheard him. Rabbi sova oisa chaver oichel v'tzech las. Rabbi hold that chaver eats. Then v'tzech las, so doesn't have to give ma'aser. Why? The vadai isur me'aser au chaver. For sure, that chaver would give ma'aser kamo iloi. For certainly, the first chaver tied them. Rabbi Gamliel says, "Lo yochalat she'aser." Should not eat until it gives ma'aser. Why? Chaverim were not suspected to give tithe for something that is not in close proximity, from produce not in close proximity to the table. Rabbi told them, Mutav sheyichoshdu chaverim leitreim sheloi min hamukaf. it's better, it's preferable that Chaverim should be suspected of separating Truma and Meiser from produce not in close proximity to the Tevel, even though it's not in close proximity, which we said before, it's possible, but it's not the right way to do it. It's not the proper way to do it. Something that is not in close proximity. But as long as they don't feed unsuspecting common people food which is tevel. The Gemara explains the point of contention between Rabbi Shin Gamliel and Rabbi. On what principle do they argue? Rabbi Sovar Nichalil Chover de Lavi de Sur Klil. A Chover would be amenable. Okay, it would be okay with to commit a minor infraction, tithing tevel from produce located elsewhere. That's a minor infraction. Again, tithing tevel from produce located elsewhere. Velo li'avad amaretz surabo. A common person does not commit a major infraction, eating tevel. The minor infraction that he would tithe from produce that is elsewhere. So that's the opinion of Rabbi. Rabbi Shin Gamliel Sovar Nichalei lechover. Chover would be amenable. The liavad amaretz isura rabo, that a common person commit a major infraction, and he not commit even a minor infraction, which is really a little bit the character. Are you willing not to do any violation whatsoever, even the minor one, but someone else can do a big one and you don't care? That's so he says Rabbi Shimon, he goes into the mind of the Chaver. He says, this guy, that a common person commit a major infraction, he's okay with. Nichale. Ve'iu, but on himself, he wants to do everything perfect. He not commit even a minor infraction.
He's mahmir.
But on himself. And that's not the Chabad way. Chabad way is that it should bother you that someone is doing infractions. That other people are... the focus is not on your perfection. Over here, Chaver is focused on his perfection.
Well, actually,
someone else is doing, okay, that's his life. But if you understand, we're on the same
Chabad
boat.
is like this, yeah?
No, Chabad is saying we are all on the same boat. So it bothers me that someone is doing Avera.
But you don't say nothing.
No,
it depends on the
we
situation.
do. Well, of course we do. Why do we think this place is? We say it in a different way. They're saying it, I can say it to you. Let's say a person is not keeping Shabbat. So I can tell him, if you don't keep Shabbat, you're going to be punished.
No.
And the punishment is this Gehenom, that Gehenom.
Yeah.
I can say,
The whole thing.
if you understood the beauty of Shabbat, if you understood the how much joy you give to Hashem for keeping Shabbat, you would of course keep Shabbat. So it's a different approach of different approaches.
I tell people a little bit of a gashmis. All week we're with all the electronics and everything. One day, not to bother with all this stuff. It's a wonderful thing.
Rabbi, can I ask a question about the Maser? Imagine if we are not allowed to give more than 20%, okay?
No, it says in Tanya that only if you don't have sins. If you have sins, you can give more to atone for the sins.
Also, I don't have questions.
Yeah, so you have to separate between Maaser and Tzedakah.
Not now, not this time, but on the Gemara, like we learned yesterday. So imagine if I have 100 apples. I give a gift to a Kohen 5 apples. So now I have 95. I give Maser Rishon to the Levi, more 10 apples, for example. Now I have 85. Now I have to do Maser Sheni. More 10% that I have from this 85.
But that's for you.
What?
Maser Sheni is for you. You are eating it. Maser
Oh,
Sheni.
eating in Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
But, okay, so it's not giving.
No, it's not giving.
Oh.
The 85 apples that you have left.
Okay, it's me, it's mine.
So the
Okay.
8.5 apples is for your family.
Okay.
But in the example that you said, it comes out to like 15% that goes to Levi and the Kohen.
Yeah.
But you're allowed to give the Kohen one apple,
Okay.
and the Levi you're giving him
10% from the
yeah.
rest.
If you have a 99, you give him 9.9. That's 10%, and the Levi would give the Kohen
He's 10%.
from the 9. You give, let's say 10. He would give 1, so the Kohen end up with 2 apples.
Yeah.
Levi end up with 8 apples,
Okay.
and you end up with the rest, the whole thing. I believe it wasn't even every year. I think it was like the first, third, and 6, 7.
Yeah,
There's like
different
I had a certain cycle of how many
Meiser Rishon, Meiser Sheni, Meiser
when you had to
Shlishi,
give
Meiser
it.
Ani.
or was it just on the Bikurim? And the Bikurim was not every year.
You think the Quran should be every year because you
It
got.
says that when he would say Bi'alti HaKodesh Min HaBayis, it was like the Rashi says over there that he's not allowed to keep it more than 3 years. There was a certain deadline that he had to give it. So the Mishnah says, "Nason Bi'ilan L'maylo Ma'asor Tfachim." If you place the Eruv on a tree higher than 10 Tfachim, higher than 50 inches, so 55 inches off the ground, instead of putting it on the ground, you put it on the tree. Ein Eruv or Eruv. Eruv is not valid Eruv. Lamata Ma'asor Tfachim Eruv or Eruv. Less than 3 Tfachim, less than 10 Tfachim, meaning let's say 5 Tfachim above ground, 6, 7, 8, it's fine, it's still an Eruv. If you put it in a pit, even if the depth of the pit was 100 amas, it's still kosher. Okay, that's the Mishnah. Higher is not good. Higher than 10 tefachim is not good. Less than 10 tefachim is okay. And if you put it in a pit, even 100 amma deep,
No good.
it's still good.
Oh, still good.
Eruv or Eruv is valid. So Yosef Rabbi Chia Bar Ravasi Rava Bar Noson Yosef Nachman Gabayu Yosef Kamwe. They said together, and this is what they said. Hai Elon, this tree, the koi, heicho. What exactly happened with this tree? Hai Elon, the koi, heicho. This tree mentioned in the Mishnah, where was it standing? Analyzing the Mishnah. If the tree was in a private domain, this is actually also American law. It says what the difference is if you put it higher than 10 tefachim, lower than 10 tefachim. It says Rishus HaYochid, private domain, goes all the way to the sky. So we spoke about it, that I'm not allowed to put a drone above your house, even 200 feet, because your property goes all the way to the sky, to the heavens, even though it's not, but the airspace is yours. And if we say rather that the tree stands in the Reshus Harabim, the miskaven lishbois, where then did the owner of the Eruvin intend to establish his residence at the onset of the Shabbat? Where exactly he wants to call it a residence. It's a tree in Rishus Harabim. Or not necessarily a tree, but it's Rishus Harabim. If we say that he intended to establish his residence above, in the tree where he placed his Eruv, that's where he wants to sit. He make like a tree house, a imaginary tree house. He plans on, that's his residence where he planned on residing on Shabbat. Not physically, but the idea is.
And the air of the Rishut Rabim is...
Let's see. The air of Rishus Harabim still belong to Rishut Harabim, right? You can't say, I want that's mine from now on. It remains Rishus Harabim. It remains public domain. So, hu ve'iruvov makom echad. So it says he. Then the eruv should be valid even at the height above 10 tefachim. Why? Because he and his eruv are in one place. Why then would the Mishnah rule it invalid? Ela niskaven lishbis lemato. Rather, the Mishnah refers to one who intended to establish his Shabbos residence on the ground below. And that's why it's not good, because his intention was to do it on the floor. But instead he put the Eruv on the tree. If his intention was to reside on the tree on Shabbat, that should be okay. That's why Gemara says we have to say that his intention was to do it below, to reside below, but he placed the Eruv in the wrong place, higher than 10 tefachim. However, if the owner has established his Shabbat residence on the ground below, the second case of the Mishnah is difficult to understand. What was it? But even if the Eruv is situated below 10 tefachim, he is using the tree when he removes the Eruv, and thereby violates rabbinical law. We're not allowed to shake the tree on Shabbat. You're not allowed to climb trees on Shabbat, even though the Eruv is not located in Rishut HaYachid. It is still inaccessible to its owner and is therefore invalid.
So wait a minute, okay, so we're saying if it's over 10 tefachim high on the tree, it's not you can't use it for an Erev Tikkun, right? Is this what we just said?
That's what the Mishnah
The
said.
Mishnah said. So then, but we said if it's under the ground, even 100 amas, it still could be a kosher.
Correct. Yeah, but then now the Gemara says that if he decides that his residence would be on the tree, that's his intention.
Yeah.
Even 10 amas should be okay. Even higher than 10 amas should be okay. But that's it. So then the Gemara says, that's what they're saying now. It says, and if he decides his intention is to place the Eruv on the ground, but his intention is to reside in the ground, but instead he placed the Eruv on the tree, said it's not valid, right? More than 10 amos. Gemara now goes the other way. He says, 1 second. We said that less than 10 amos is less than 10 tefachim is okay. But he can't touch the tree. So how is it, why is that okay? That's what the Gemara now says.
So they shouldn't start with this discussion.
It's a rabbinical violation to take it from the tree on Shabbat. So let's see, the Gemara says, really, the tree is standing in a Rishus Harabim, in a public domain, as we established earlier. And he intended to establish his Shabbos residence on the ground below. And as to the problem of removing the Eruv, which rests below 10 tefachim, from the tree, the Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi, who said, Kol davar shu mishum shvus, any activity that is prohibited in the Shabbos by rabbinical law, like goes to all of Ben Hashmoses, was not forbidden during the twilight period, since it is not certain that the Shabbos has begun, since he is permitted to remove his Eruv from the tree during the twilight, at which time the Eruv takes effect, the Eruv is considered accessible and is therefore valid. You see what they're saying? He says like this: if you place the Eruv on the tree,
Before Shabbat.
obviously, so it's accessible to you all the way till Shabbat, right? So since it was good till Shabbat, it should be okay. Still be okay, even though on Shabbat itself you cannot touch it. So this. It says, Kol davar shu mishum shvut, any activity that is prohibited on Shabbat by rabbinical law, to touch the tree is rabbinical law. Lo ygozu olav ben hashmosh, it was not forbidden during the twilight period. But what's the issue of touching the tree? Maybe you'll cut a branch, right? So it's biblically you're just not allowed to cut a branch. Rabbinically, they don't want you to come to it, so they said don't touch it. So anything that is shvut is rabbinical. Shvut means rabbinical decree. Lo gazuel ben hashmashot was not forbidden during the twilight period. Now, since the twilight period it was not forbidden, it's not forbidden for him to leave it there. Since it is not certain that the Shabbos has begun, since he is permitted to remove his Eruv from the tree during twilight, at which time the Eruv takes effect, the Eruv is considered accessible and is therefore valid. The entire discussion took place, as mentioned earlier, in the presence of Rav Nachman. When the participants concluded their analysis, he listened to them all, and then Rav Nachman said, Malu Rav Nachman, Yeshar v'chen Omar Shmuel. Correct, and so said Shmuel. Omulei, the rabbis present, said to Rav Nachman, did you analyze the Mishnah so thoroughly? They were amazed that Rav Nachman has examined the Mishnah in such great depth.
Thoroughly is deep.
Yeah, thorough. They're very thorough. They're very diligent. They're looking at every single thing. Itmar Nami. So it was also stated, Rav Nachman was Shmuel. Rav Nachman said in the name of Shmuel, we're dealing with a tree that stands in Rishus Harabim. Gavoy asor v'rochav bo, 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. V'niskaven lishbos lemato, and the owner of the Eruv intended to establish his Shabbos residence on the ground below. Rabbi de Omar, and the Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi, who said,
Rabbi, you jump a part.
Right.
You jump, the Gemara questions the Rabbi reaction. Because he didn't
He's right.
Okay. The Gemara questions the Rabbi's reaction, Inu nami achika possible. They too has subjected the Mishnah to rigorous scrutiny. Ela hachi amulei. Rather, this is what they said to Rav Nachman. Kavisu lebegemara. Did you establish it in the Gemara? Amar leu'in. So Rav Nachman said to them, yes, I did. Yes, we did. Eitmar nami. Rav Nachman was Shmuel. Rav Nachman said, in the name of Shmuel, here in the Mishnah we are dealing with a tree that stands in Rishus Harabim. Gavoy asor v'rochav bo, which is 10 tefachim high and 4 tefachim wide. So 50 inches by 20 inches. V'niskaven lishbos lemato. And the owner of the Eruv intended to establish his Shabbos residence on the ground below. He wanted to do it on the ground. That's where his residence is going to be. Rabbi, the Omar, and the Mishnah reflects the view of Rabbi, who said, Kol davar shu mishum shvus, any activity that is prohibited on the Shabbos by rabbinical law, lo gozu olav ben hashmoshes, was not forbidden during the twilight period, since it is not certain that the Shabbos has begun. So it's a double, in a way, a double sofek. It's a shvus, rabbinical, so there's a little bit more leniency, and it's ben hashmoshes, so we're not sure it's Shabbos. Rava qualifies the ruling of the Mishnah. Amar Rava leishonu. Rava said they taught in the Mishnah that an eruv placed above 10 tefachim is invalid. Higher, that's what we learned in the Mishnah, right? Ela keila noemed chutz leibur shalil. Only in reference to a tree which stands beyond the outskirts of the city. It's like outside the city. But regarding a tree which stands within the outskirts of the city, even if the eruv is placed in the tree above 10 tefachim from the ground, this is a valid eruv. The moso command the malyo damyo, because in order to facilitate the establishment of eruv tchumim, the city is regarded as if it were filled in with dirt to the top of the walls which enclose it, thereby rendering the entire city and its outskirts a single area higher than the tefachim, which constitutes a reshus hayochid.
You know, I got a question. Okay, so if it's in the, I thought it had for the Erev Techum, it would be 2,000 amas away from anything. Here, so if it's in the city limits, isn't it? What's the point of having an Erev Techum if it's in the city limits?
Oh, because let's say this is the city, right? This book is the city, and you live right here.
Okay.
So you walk 2,000 amas. Now you wanna walk another 2,000 amas. So you put the eruv at the outskirts.
But if there are houses,
but
and
it's
stuff,
still inside.
But if there let's say I'm going to go walk to Parkland, and I'm walking down 441. Now there's buildings all over the place. So why would I need an Erev Techum to go to Parkland?
Because you're going out of your techum. Your techum is boka, and you're going out of your techum to another area. The question is, where do you put the eruv? If you put the eruv next to your house, you're not gaining anything. If you put the eruv at the edge, at the outskirts,
And by BJ's, let's say.
yes, so then it gives you BJ is already pakra. But I'm saying when you put it closer to the edge, but there's still a difference between the inside the city limits or outside the city limits. If you put it outside, higher than 10 tefachim would be invalid. If you put it inside, if the tree is inside, it would still be okay. The question is why. So the Gemara answers, and the Gemara says, the city is regarded as if it were filled with dirt to the top of the walls which enclose it, thereby rendering the entire city and its outskirts a single area higher than 10 tefachim, which constitute the reshus hayochid. So it's as if the area is already higher than, meaning the ground is, so to speak, filled up with dirt. That's how we picture it, inside the city. Iachi, the Gemara says, so why don't we do the same thing to the outside of the city? Iachi chutz leibur shlir nami. Let's say that it's also filled up with dirt. One who places his eruv gains himself 4 ames surrounding the eruv, which is like an enclosed private domain. So this 4 ames is for him private domain, where the eruv is. If he would like to carry from one place to another, within the eruv is this 4 ames, 36 inches by 36. It's like 3 feet by 3 feet is considered the reshut hayachid, private domain, even though it's in reshut harabim. It says, one who places the eruv gains himself 4 ames surrounding the eruv, which is like an enclosed private domain. Besides the 2,000 amot of tchum, he has 4 ames that he can walk around or carry. In order to facilitate the establishment of eruv tchum in this area, should be considered reshut hayachid. should be considered private domain. Ureshut ha'echid ola ad l'rakia, and a private domain should extend all the way to heaven. And if that's the case, even if you placed the Eruv higher than 10 Tfachim and outside of the city, it should be okay, because you're getting yourself 4 ames. 4 ames, it becomes Shut Echid, so it should be okay. So the Gemara accepts this suggestion and further qualifies the case of the Mishnah. So why the Mishnah says, what case exactly the Mishnah was speaking about? Amar Rav Yitzchak Brei de Rav Menashe Amitay, Rav Yitzchak the son of Rav Menashe Amitay said, and here we are dealing with a tree whose branches extend 4 ames from its trunk. And he intended to establish his Shabbos residence at the base of the tree, at the trunk. Since the Eruv rests beyond 4 ames from the tree base, he must bring the Eruv into his 4 ames. However, taking the Eruv from the tree necessarily involves a transfer from Reshus HaYochid, the tree, at a height above 10 Tfachim, to Reshus HaRabim, to the ground below the Eruv. This is prohibited. First case of the Mishnah, however, when the Eruv rests in the tree between 3 and 10 Tfachim from the ground, it may be removed from the tree. Subsequently, it may be transported through the Reshus HaRabim to the Shabbos residence at the base of the tree without violating any Shabbos precepts. This is permitted. Second case of the Mishnah. So it gives you, in the diagram, you can see what they're talking about with a branch that extends even 4 ames, more than 4 ames outside. And that will be a little bit more of a situation. Okay, we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow.